I don't know what point that is going to feel real.
Reagan, you are my heart, and I will never find a friend like you. I love you, and until we meet again.
Reagan was not pursuing medicine for prestige or for money, rather to help others, and especially people of color and from low-income backgrounds.
Some crimes, although grisly, make sense. They come after years of red flags, toxic relationships, or a mental decline left unaddressed. Other crimes simply don't add up. When terrible things happen to good people, the world seems to stop for a second. What we thought we knew is gone. And for a moment, we feel unsafe. What happened to Reagan Chisley in June 2021 is indescribable. She had a whole life and a bright future ahead of her, and she had nothing but kindness to spread. And yet, she met a brutal, senseless ending at the hands of a teenage boy she thought she knew. This is the tragic story of the bright med student unalived by a troubled teen.
I walked across the street and looked down the street, and you could see one of the policemen doing CPR on the girl, and the ambulance came, put her in the ambulance, and had 2 police cars just flying behind them, getting her to the hospital.
It was Tuesday, June 22, 2021, when someone called 911 in a state of shock. A girl had just been attacked in front of a house in the Berkeley Drive area in Hampton, Virginia. When emergency services made it to the address, they thought the shooter was still inside, so they called for backup. It soon escalated into a horror show. A SWAT team, a dozen officers, paramedics, and scared bystanders were all crammed around one small house, expecting the worst. But it soon fizzled out, as the SWAT team realized the shooter had fled the scene before the officers even got there.
Last night, it turned into a barricade situation. The SWAT team surrounded a home for hours before realizing it was empty.
The bystanders watched as a young woman was taken into an ambulance on a stretcher, blood still oozing out of her. A few minutes later, she was pronounced dead at the Hampton Centara Careplex. A bullet had pierced her heart. That night, she was identified, and news of her death flooded TV screens across the country.
20-year-old Reagan Chisley died after she was shot off Berkeley Drive last week. Hampton police are still looking for the suspect tonight.
Imagine learning your daughter's life was taken from TV.
After the third homicide in the Hampton Roads city since the weekend.
That suspect, just 16 years old. They have his name and his picture, but they don't have him behind bars yet.
Before leaving the scene, officers spoke to witnesses. The ruckus before the shooting had attracted a few eyes that afternoon. Several people told the same story. Reagan was with a friend, fighting with an older lady when a 16-year-old boy pulled out a firearm, aimed at Reagan's chest, and fired. By the time anyone was able to phone 911, the teen and his mom fled their own home. Yep, the boy's mom was there, and she was happy to help her son escape, even after watching him do this. Reagan fell to the ground, unconscious. She would lose her life in a matter of minutes, while her best friend watched helplessly. Immediately after the incident, the 16-year-old suspect was identified. His age did not protect his identity. He was a wanted fugitive, and people needed to know his name and face. This was Zaquan J. Tyler, the cousin of Reagan's friend, 20-year-old Khadijah Newsome. As investigators delved into the case, they pieced together a senseless, heartbreaking story that shouldn't have ended this way. In 1969, the state of Virginia got a new slogan: Virginia is for lovers. This was the Woodstock year. The hippie movement was at an all-time high, and love was, well, a selling point. The phrase was considered bold and provocative, but it was also just plain smart from a marketing perspective. It planted a seed, a new image of a more exciting Virginia, with a generation that would become the most sought-after group of spenders ever to wield a credit card. However, Virginia kept its slogan to this day. Full of natural splendor and historical landmarks, Virginia still attracts its fair share of tourists and young families. Sadly, though, Virginia is also known for some pretty dangerous towns. One of them is Hampton. 1 in 338 people fall victim to a violent crime in their lifetime in Hampton, and 1 in 481 people suffer the same fate in Virginia.
By all accounts, we are facing a long, hot summer. We are seeing a surge in violent crime across Hampton roads. It's teens and gangs and guns. The shootings are senseless and often random. Why is what everyone wants to know and no one seemingly can answer.
And when you read these stats, it's easy to think, sounds bad. But this can never happen to me or my loved ones. Of course, it's not wise to live in fear, and no one should live their lives always looking over their shoulder, expecting to fall victim to a monster. Sadly, every now and then, someone's loved one is taken away and becomes just another statistic. Reagan Chisley lived a full, happy life, free of worries and full of loving friends.
Studious, fashionable, and more importantly, a friend you could count on. That's how faculty, staff, and students described their classmate and fellow NCCU Eagle, Reagan Chisley.
Reagan was born on June 9, 2001, and from day one, she showed a crazy amount of positive energy. She was smart, well beyond her age, and was hardworking without anyone having to tell her so. She was only 3 years old when she decided she wanted to be an exceptional dancer. Her parents signed her up for ballet lessons, and she soon demonstrated huge talent. She was still 3 when she gave her first recital. This is pretty rare when it comes to ballet, which takes a lot of practice. Reagan did not stick to ballet as her life goal, but she continued to do everything with the greatest passion, patience, and diligence. Between 2010 and 2013, she was part of a dance competition team organized by the prestigious Evelyn School of Dance. Then, in 2013, Reagan began cheerleading. While she also put a lot of energy into it, Reagan knew she wanted to pursue a higher education. She was just 11 when she told all her friends she would be attending NCCU, or North Carolina Central University. And everyone supported her, just like she would them.
She was such a fun, caring person. She had the most unique kind of personality I've ever seen in my life.
Reagan wasn't the popular type in the sense that she was overly confident or rich, but she was always a good friend and put in a lot of effort to listen and help those who came to her. This made her popular in the most genuine way possible. She was also super fashionable, and that attracted a lot of eyes. So by the time she graduated from high school, Reagan had 2 major passions: fashion and medicine. Reagan graduated with honors, and she was ready for new chapters in her life.
Reagan Chisley honors.
You have worked extremely hard to reach this milestone in your life. The administration, faculty, and staff are very proud of you.
Reagan's friends and family would often ask her for fashion tips and look up to her for her style. But more than anything, they looked up to her because she was mature, caring, and determined to help others. For her, studying medicine was a means to help as many people as possible.
I could tell that Reagan was not pursuing medicine for prestige or for money, rather to help others, and especially people of color and from low-income backgrounds.
And during her NCCU years, she made sure all her friends stayed focused on their goals and kept up the good habits.
Reagan didn't let me drop out, and I thank her for that. If it wasn't for her, I wouldn't be here right now.
Reagan's family never ceased to be amazed at how much energy she had. It was almost like there were more hours in a day to her. In 2021, she was a med school student, a cheerleader, a dancer, a basketball player, a track runner, a chemistry tutor, and a clothing designer. Meanwhile, she always took her time to sit down with friends and encourage them to never give up. And wait, that's not all. She'd even started a clothing line, aiming to pursue her love of fashion and take it one step further. If you asked Reagan how she did it all, she would tell you it's all being focused and organized. In 2021, Reagan lived in North Carolina, where she attended NCCU. But during the summer holidays, She would be back home with her family in Hampton, Virginia. She had a lot of loved ones, relatives and childhood friends that she cherished deeply, and she didn't want any distance between them. So in June 2021, Reagan celebrated her 20th birthday with family and friends. She seemed happier than ever, and she gushed over her friends also following their passions. A few weeks later, she would be dead. As soon as Reagan was pronounced dead, they started a huge manhunt for 16-year-old Zaquan Tyler.
After the third homicide in the Hampton Roads city since the weekend.
That suspect, just 16 years old. They have his name and his picture, but they don't have him behind bars yet.
Knowing Zaquan had fled the scene together with his mother, Lisa, investigators knew they had to look into her history too, and if she was involved in any way in taking Reagan's life. Detectives made their first big breakthrough when they spoke to the one person connecting Reagan to Zaquan, 20-year-old Khadijah Newsome. Khadijah was one of Reagan's all-time besties. They were the same age, had a lot in common, and spent a lot of time laughing together. Khadijah was also Zaquan's cousin, and y'all, their story was simply outrageous. Khadijah testified that Zaquan had stolen about $500 in cash and pot when they were living in the same house back in May of that year. The money, she said, included gifts from her high school graduation and tips from her restaurant job. She was not rich. $500 meant a lot to her. Khadijah was frustrated, to say the least. I worked hard for it. Zaquan was like a brother to me before this happened. On June 22nd, Khadijah asked Reagan to accompany her on a petty mission. They were going to visit Zaquan's home to get back everything he'd stolen from her. If they had to threaten him, so be it. He couldn't call himself their friend if he behaved this way. But when the two friends knocked on the door, Zaquan's mom, Lisa, opened the door. She already looked angry, even though the girls hadn't done anything to her. Khadijah explained that Lisa's son owed her some money, and they needed to talk to him. They knew he was home. Rather than calling her son to come outside and sort it out, or hey, invite the girls inside, Lisa straight up denied her son's theft and started cussing at Reagan and Khadijah. She called them names and cursed them for making false allegations against her precious son. Then, just like that, Zaquan emerged and pulled out a weapon. He pointed it at Reagan's chest and fired from just a few inches. Wait, what? What had Reagan ever done to Zaquan? She wasn't even the one demanding the money back. Also, who on earth solves a petty argument this way? Up until a few weeks back, Zaquan and Khadijah were good friends. What happened during those weeks to make him do this, to take Khadijah's best friend instead of paying up? Was his madness in the making? Did he have unresolved mental issues? And how much of this was fueled by his mother? You see, this is another sad thing the detectives unearthed. As it turns out, Lisa had prepared her son for a fight the night before, on June 21st. That evening, Khadijah texted Zaquan and Lisa to tell them she was coming over to retrieve the money and weed. Initially, Lisa said okay, and even asked how much Zaquan had taken. Khadijah would testify, she said she got me and she was gonna handle it. But then, Lisa changed her mind. She told Khadijah that her son hadn't stolen anything and that she would fight Khadijah if she turned up at her house. She texted her, I don't care about no consequences. Y'all, what is up with these people? 15 days after taking Reagan's life in front of his home, Zaquan was caught at a Newport News motel. The officers didn't find the weapon he used that day. However, they found a ton of ammo in his room. Was he getting ready for more violence? Indeed, Zaquan seemed to be intent on dodging authorities, but he did not seem remorseful or devastated by what he'd done. The detectives concluded that Zaquan, and perhaps even Lisa, had a lot of repressed anger toward Reagan to act this abruptly. It was a hugely disproportionate reaction toward a person who was simply accompanying her best friend to solve an issue. And why else would they target her, and not Khadijah? She was the one set on retrieving her stolen goods. Perhaps Zakwan wanted to punish his cousin for seeking what was hers. Apart from hate, there was no motive detectives saw in this heinous act. Zakwan's ammo was taken from the scene and sent to a lab for testing. The lab would confirm a match with the round that took Reagan's life. Zakwan was thus charged with first-degree murder. When he was handcuffed, taken to the station, and interrogated, Zakwan still did not show remorse, only frustration that he'd been caught. It's safe to wonder if he would have gone on to claim more lives in this state of mind. Zakwan's trial began when he was already 18 years old. However, he was a minor at the time of the incident, so that saved him from the toughest kinds of punishment. In the courtroom, Khadija testified that she was angry at Zakwan and set to have an argument with him about his stealing. She'd texted several friends the days before. She said in one text that I'm gonna go over there and steal all his stuff, telling another person she was on demon time, and that the police might need to be called. However, Reagan was just a partner Khadija brought along that day, so why did Zakwan punish her the hardest? According to one theory given by the prosecution, Zakwan and Lisa's hatred toward Reagan came from her perceived perfection. Reagan was a smart, successful med student with a bright future ahead of her. She was going to make more money than them, she already had a fashion line, and she was pretty and popular. What they failed to see, however, is that everyone struggles on the inside. Everyone has problems, and just because someone is doing well on the outside doesn't mean their lives are perfect. Also, if someone is happy, be happy for them. There was another theory, though. Perhaps Zakwan had severe anger issues stemming from something that had nothing to do with Reagan. Perhaps he had mental issues not noticed or even ignored by his mother. Or maybe he'd been raised in a violent environment where this was seen as a solution to any problem. It's telling that Lisa prepared for a fight as soon as Khadija texted her the night before the incident. Maybe she riled Zakwan up, not the other way around. Perhaps Zakwan grew up in a house where disproportionate reactions were the norm. Clearly, Lisa was not shocked when her son pulled the trigger. She watched, then urged her son to flee the scene. Most mothers, I'd like to believe, would phone authorities. You can only protect your child up to a point, right? So depending on which theory you believe, Reagan was at the wrong place, at the wrong time, or she was targeted. Either way, she did not deserve any of this. It was a horrific end to a life defined by love, kindness, and ambition. Hampton Chief Deputy Commonwealth's attorney, Karen Rucker, and attorney Eden Holmes pushed for first-degree murder. As far as they were concerned, it was a premeditated attack. Even if Reagan was not targeted, Zakwan knew what he was going to do when he got the gun and walked out of his home to a fight that had just begun. Karen Rucker said he brought a gun to a fist fight, and he didn't have to kill her. Under Virginia law, she said, people can use no more force than reasonably necessary to defend another, and Zakwan had a million options, Eden Holmes said, including intervening in the altercation himself. Eden Holmes spoke to the jurors during Zakwan's 2023 trial. She never had a chance to live her dreams. She never had a chance to take another person under her wing. Imagine how heartbreaking it was for Reagan's family to sit there, listening to this, and reliving the horror. Meanwhile, Zakwan's defense attorneys painted another picture. Zakwan, according to them, was just a supportive teen intervening to help his mother, fearing for her life. While the 16-year-old could have handled things better, Ballady said, the case was at most manslaughter stemming from heat of passion rather than murder arising from malice. Heat of passion is when you think your mom is in danger and you shoot someone to stop a fight, Ballady told jurors. But how was Lisa's life in danger when two 20-year-old girls were there, unarmed, demanding to talk to her son? The jury deliberated for 3 hours before the judge asked them to come back the following day after a good night's sleep. They deliberated for another 2.5 hours the following morning. Finally, there was a verdict for Zakwan.
Have an update now on a homicide case in Hampton. A jury found Zaquan Tyler guilty of voluntary manslaughter and underage possession of a firearm.
Due to his age at the time of the incident and the manslaughter charge, Zaquan will only spend 10 years in prison. This was not a happy verdict for Reagan's family. Zaquan gets a full life outside prison. Reagan doesn't get another day. Her dad, Terry, said, "My baby girl, my pork chop. I couldn't save my own daughter. I have been robbed. I have a hole in my soul that can't be filled, and I don't know if I will ever be happy again. I miss hearing her voice. I miss hearing her walking up the stairs. I miss hearing her bracelets colliding while she's walking." After his sentencing, Zaquan finally offered an apology 2 years late. "I wish I could go back and undo what I did. If there's anything I could do to bring Reagan back, I would do it. She was a good person, and like a sister to me. She didn't deserve this, and I will live with it forever." The judge acknowledged Zaquan's remorse, but reminded him that what he did could not be taken back. Reagan's horrific death left a terrible impact on her whole family. Her parents are devastated, and her little brothers can't sleep anymore. One of her little brothers refuses to go outside anymore. He is scared for his life. If something this horrible could happen to Reagan, he thinks, it can happen to anyone. Imagine growing up with this immense hole in your heart and a constant state of fear. With Zaquan behind bars, it was time to remember and honor Reagan once more.
Friends and loved ones of a Hampton woman killed in a recent homicide came together to honor her life.
The community at North Carolina Central University, where Chisley was a student, held a virtual memorial this afternoon.
Reagan was honored through several memorials after her death. Whether it was friends, family, or college pals, everyone spoke highly of her. Others couldn't hold back the tears at how unfair and senseless the situation was.
I don't know what point that is going to feel real.
Reagan, you are my heart, and I will never find a friend like you. I love you, and until we meet again.
Reagan's grandfather said that now, he doesn't take any calls between 9:30 and 10 p.m. You see, Reagan would call him every single night at 9:30 sharp. Not 9:29, not 9:31, not 9:32. Reagan cared deeply for all those around her, and to everyone's constant surprise, she always found the time and energy to let them know they were loved, even amidst her 1,000 responsibilities, ambitions, and plans. The ripple effects of Zaquan's actions will be felt for many years still. Heartbreakingly, Reagan was not the first or last victim of such a senseless moment.
New at 6 o'clock, mass continue to plague the nation, in South Florida, of course, no exception, with 3 incidents being reported this year alone.
As of March 2024, more than 25,000 people lost their lives in GN violence incidents. Of those who died, over 1,000 were children and teenagers.
Makes me frustrated that we, as a society, we haven't done enough to stop these. The bystanding public makes a huge difference in being able to prevent these attacks by noticing the behavioral changes of those around us, whether they be family members or friends or coworkers.
This is the father of Gina Montalto, yet another girl who lost her life in 2023 in a situation painfully similar to Reagan's. And Gina's dad is right. We have a duty to look around us. If we notice someone close to us is getting angry beyond reason or entering a violent argument, we can try and cool things off. And if we feel afraid, it's wise to gain some distance and call authorities. If we can do something about it, we should. However, it's disheartening to see how fast someone can take a life with a fire weapon. In Reagan's case, Zaquan aimed at Reagan's chest just 30 seconds into her argument with his mom. It took her a few minutes to pass away. An angry, impulsive teen with a firearm is a match made in hell. How many people will go through Reagan's chilling story before this changes? Hey, thanks for watching. What are your thoughts on Reagan's story? Do you know of other similar cases? Let me know in a comment. And before you go, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that bell button. See you next time.